Sunday morning, October 19th, 2025, Paris, France. The kind of morning that feels ordinary. Cloud cover hanging low over the Seine, soft light on wet cobblestones. The day was just beginning to unfold. Tour buses unloading, tourists arriving in front of the glass pyramid, art students sketching along the steps, the Louvre getting ready for another routine day. No one in that crowd knew what history was about to witness. In just 7 minutes, the world's most famous museum would endure the biggest daylight art heist of the 21st century. At 9:30 a.m., a furniture lift rolled up to the riverside of the Louvre. 2 men in yellow work vests climbed into the metal basket. They carried power tools, the kind you'd see on any construction site in any city in the world. The lift began to rise. It looked like an official maintenance session with those guys. Nobody looked up. The basket stopped at a second-floor window on the riverside of the museum. 4 minutes later, those 2 men would be inside one of the most heavily protected galleries in France. 7 minutes after that, they'd be gone. And in the gutter below, lying in the dirt like trash, a 19th century crown that had survived revolutions, exiles, and 2 world wars, bent, damaged, abandoned. The Louvre had just lost its crown jewels in broad daylight. It's not just a heist, it's about cultural damage, damage that can't be recovered. It was history erased in 7 minutes, the end of a legacy. For more than a century, the Louvre has sold itself as a fortress, a former royal palace where things are supposed to be safe. By 2025, the official story sounded reassuring. Cameras in every ceiling, reinforced glass around the Mona Lisa, alarms wired into a control room that never sleeps. On paper, the Louvre was one of the last places on Earth anyone would try a smash and grab. But here's the truth they didn't tell you. Audits had been warning for years that the museum had persistent security problems, aging cameras, blind spots in coverage, a modernization plan that kept getting delayed. The risks were documented, the recommendations were filed, and nothing happened until it did. The gallery they chose sits high above the river, the Galerie d'Apollon, a long gilded hall dripping with Baroque excess, frescoes on the ceiling, gold leaf everywhere, paintings that blur into one continuous dream of power and wealth. And in the center of that room, locked inside 2 reinforced glass cases, what remained of the French crown jewels. Emerald necklaces strung with over 1,000 stones, tiaras commissioned for empresses, a brooch that once belonged to Napoleon himself. Officials would later estimate the loss at 88 million euros. But the real value? Incalculable. The truck that pulled up along the quay looked like it belonged there. It was a Sunday. Museums do maintenance on Sundays. The men wore high-visibility vests, the same fluorescent yellow you see on every construction worker in Paris. The lift rose, slowly, deliberately. At the top, they pulled out angle grinders and cut through the window frame. The alarm system registered a breach at 9:34 a.m., but by then, they were already inside. What happened next didn't look like panic. It looked like choreography. The men walked straight into the Galerie d'Apollon. No hesitation, no wrong turns. They knew exactly where they were going. Video footage shows sparks flying as the grinders bite into reinforced glass. White dust, the whine of the blades, tourists somewhere in the background, oblivious. Reinforced glass isn't unbreakable. It's just designed to slow you down. These men weren't slow. They cut. They reached through. They took 9 pieces. 4 minutes after entering the gallery, they turned and walked back the way they came. Back through the window, back into the basket, down the wall. But something went wrong. The crown of Empress Eugénie, gold, heavy, set with diamonds, was too large for the gap they'd cut in the glass. They forced it through anyway. The metal buckled, the crown crumpled. It hit the pavement. By the time guards burst into the gallery, the thieves were already speeding away on 2 scooters, weaving through traffic along the Seine. The whole operation took 7 minutes. But here's what's strange. The first alert didn't come from the Louvre's security system. It came from a cyclist, a man riding along the river who saw helmeted figures climbing out of a window with a basket lift and dialed the emergency line. The museum's cameras They were facing the wrong direction. The external camera covering that side of the building was angled west. It didn't capture the window the thieves used. Paris police arrived fast, but by then, the delay had already happened earlier in the chain. Inside the Louvre, the reaction was immediate. Evacuation, lockdown, forensics. When the museum reopened 3 days later, the Galerie d'Apollon stayed dark. The remaining jewels were quietly moved into a vault at the Bank of France. Interpol added the missing pieces to its database of stolen art. But the thieves had left something behind. In their haste, they'd abandoned a motorcycle helmet, a circular saw, a glove, a gas can, a walkie-talkie, and a reflective vest. DNA fingerprints, digital breadcrumbs. Less than a week later, police arrested the first 2 suspects. One was caught at Charles de Gaulle Airport trying to board a one-way flight to Algeria. His DNA matched traces found on a scooter used in the getaway. The other was arrested at his home in Aubervilliers, a suburb north of Paris. Both men were in their late 30s. Both had criminal records, mostly petty theft, traffic offenses, not international art thieves, not sophisticated masterminds, just criminals. By early November, 7 people had been arrested. One suspect told investigators he worked as an illegal taxi driver. Another had been a garbage collector. And yet, somehow, they had walked into the Louvre and walked out with 88 million euros worth of crown jewels. Here's what's haunting. In the same gallery, just meters away from the cases they smashed, sat 3 of the most famous diamonds in the world. The Regent, 140 carats, valued at 51 million euros alone. The Sancy, the Hortensia. The thieves didn't touch them. Why? Were they running out of time? Did they not know what they were looking at? Or was someone telling them exactly which pieces to take? Investigators still don't know. Publicly, prosecutors say there's no proof of an insider at the Louvre. But the thieves' movements, precise, confident, purposeful, suggest they weren't improvising. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The lift truck they used, it wasn't theirs. 9 days before the heist, they answered a fake moving ad on Leboncoin, a French classified site. They stole the truck from the company that showed up to the fake job. So for over a week, this crew had a stolen vehicle sitting somewhere in Paris, and nobody noticed. They planned, they waited, and when the moment came, they executed. President Emmanuel Macron called the theft a shock and promised that France would recover the jewels. A government review was ordered. The Senate held hearings. Laurence Descartes, the Louvre's director, appeared before lawmakers and admitted what everyone already knew. The museum's security was not up to standard. She offered her resignation the day of the heist. The culture minister refused it. New funding was announced. Barriers were erected around the perimeter. But the damage was done, not just to the jewels, to the myth. The crown that was dropped in the street has been recovered. It can be repaired. The other 8 pieces, still missing. Prosecutor Laure Becquois made a public appeal. These jewels are now unsellable. There's still time to give them back. But experts know the likely truth. Pieces this famous can't be sold intact. The usual path is more brutal. Break them apart, melt the gold, recut the stones. The emeralds and diamonds that once adorned empresses could already be sitting in a jeweler's case in Dubai or Hong Kong with no one the wiser. Napoleon's brooch, gone. The diadem commissioned for a royal wedding, dismantled. Their value reduced to raw material. Their stories, erased. You might want this to be a story about criminal genius. It's not. It's a story about a system that assumed it was safe because it looked safe. About audits that were filed and forgotten. About a security upgrade that kept getting delayed because there were always other priorities. About cameras that faced the wrong direction for 20 years. A small crew with ordinary criminal records used a stolen lift truck, exploited a documented blind spot, and walked away with France's crown jewels. They didn't outsmart a fortress, they walked through a door that had been left half open. The Galerie d'Apollon is still closed. The display cases sit empty. And somewhere, in a workshop, in a vault, in pieces scattered across continents, the jewels that survived centuries of upheaval are disappearing into the black market, one stone at a time.